It is estimated that sighted people acquire 80% of their knowledge through vision. For teachers of visually impaired children, the challenge is to maximise pupil learning experiences with a rich and varied multisensory curriculum.
Special schools.
This programme looks at how visually impaired pupils can build confidence, achieve their ambitions and develop the necessary skills to enjoy a full, independent life. At Dorton House Special School in Kent, pupils are supported in using all their available senses to participate in a varied curriculum. Mobility and spatial awareness are encouraged throughout the school. Dorton House employs visually impaired staff, recognising that appropriate role models are necessary to promote children's self-esteem.
In Spanish, of course.
The school believes that anything is possible, and few activities need to be ruled out on health and safety grounds.
So, if you'd like to raise your bow on.
Hello, everybody!
One way to promote learning is to share experiences with peers, and Dorton House School has forged links with Milton Margai School for the Blind in Sierra Leone.
Education makes a nation and its people wise and good.
The children have been exchanging braille letters and friendships have been formed. Milton Margai School Choir has been to England, and now 3 Dorton House pupils are about to visit their friends in Africa.
A banner up on a pole and we can raise it when we leave.
As gifts for the Milton Margai children, the whole school has been involved in making masks and tactile maps. At Dorton House, pupils' visual needs are assessed when they first arrive at the nursery to determine the support they will receive. And right from the start, children are encouraged to use hearing, smell, taste and touch to investigate their environment. Even cooking becomes a multi-sensory experience.
Now we're going to make some pizza faces today. My role is to support children in the specialist setting that we have here. We are a separate nursery from the school because we're an assessment nursery. The children can come when they're 2 and they leave us when they're 5. Some of the children will go into the school, other children go into perhaps mainstream schools in the local area. There's Maggie's face. Or to other specialist facilities for severe learning difficulty or physical difficulties. Good boy. Where's Oliver's nose? We do differentiate the cooking for the different children. We've got Faith, who will explore the food with her fingers and like to bring her fingers up to her mouth to taste, although she can't see what she's doing. Now, what's inside your mouth, Oliver, that you've
Oliver
has more vision, but he needs help putting the food in areas where he can see, because he can't see very well all the way around. And then we've got a little boy who has physical difficulties. Zach has no vision, but will be using his sense of smell and using one hand rather than both hands, but will be encouraged to feel with both. When we make our pizza faces, we're going to put on some eyes. Charlie is very much hands-on and tasting and not using his vision very much. He would need bright lights to be able to see. Round, like your face.
The special part of the assessment is looking particularly at their visual needs for actually accessing the curriculum in terms of their reading and their writing and their use of ICT and their manipulative skills.
It's well nice.
I mean, obviously a lot of it depends on what their vision is, if they're blind or partially sighted. And then as a result of that assessment, I can give directions and information as to what size print they need, what modifications they need to the curriculum, any particular specialist equipment they need, and basically how the child learns and how they access learning.
Ready, Charlie? Comes, ready, taste.
We're an interesting school community in that the unifying fact for all of our children here is that they have severe visual impairment.
Now, what do you think might look like eyes?
But they may or may not have additional disabilities. So we have quite a lot of children who one might otherwise describe as children with moderate learning difficulties, but they're also visually impaired. We also have children who have very significant other disabilities. And of course, although they may not have examination success. Nevertheless, for many of them, they have a lot of personal success in terms of personal achievement.
One, two. What do we need in the middle of our face, Oliver? They're coming from the very close unit of the family, and it's the first step out into the sighted world for them. So that's why it's so important that it's a safe, secure environment with teachers that really get tuned into their needs.
Cut it in half. We've got two.
So we work on the children really being happy, because a happy, confident child is one who's going to learn.
Oh, you're going to put that one on as the male. Should we put it that way up? Because then it's a nice smiley face.
Cooking, it's an excellent multisensory experience for the children, so the end result isn't the important thing, it's the process that they've gone through. So it can mean that they've explored containers, packets, all useful things, life skill for later on.
It's crunchy, isn't it? You taste it with your tongue.
They're able to make a mess here, nobody minds, that's the whole point. They're very little children and they need really to be able to cover themselves in it if necessary to find out the different properties, dry, wet, sticky, which they need to feel and they need to explore.
And we're going to put it on the baking tray, okay? Put it next to rice.
Mobility is begun with the very youngest children. It's not started as a formal way, it's done as a very informal way of playing with the children, but with specific activities that will help their body awareness.
Tell you what, shall we do the head, shoulders, knees and toes?
So it might be action rhymes with the locating their heads as opposed to their feet, finding out where they are just on the floor and making them aware of their positions in space. We don't hold their hands. If they are happy to walk on their own, that is the whole point, that they can do the same as any other child.
I'll meet you at the stairs, Samuel.
The building itself is well adapted. We do keep the corridors very clear. There's sensitive lighting so that it's not going to glare and upset the children whose eye conditions that might mean that they're very sensitive to light.
Good boy, what are you doing? Is square.
For those pupils who will eventually use a cane, there are pre-cane skills to be learned. Primarily, body and spatial awareness.
So now, Samuel.
I told Samuel I need.
Samuel at the moment is learning his pre-cane skills, and that involves learning body protection, trailing, squaring off, and he's been learning this route for about 4 weeks. We'll continue that route till he can do the whole route back to class. I was with him today, so gradually I will withdraw and I'll meet him at set places on the route, and eventually he will do the route and I'll meet him at class.
Where are we? That's right, that was really good. Well done.
Samuel has some learning difficulties, but he's actually achieving well for his age at the present time. We're developing his body and spatial awareness. We're continuing to develop his pre-cane skills.
Body protection. Right, so we're going to go into the gym corridor.
He was trailing what we call the shoreline, which was the wall line, and he was probably also using a protective technique. And at the same time, we were encouraging him to use his remaining senses, particularly his sense of hearing, which is the primary sense after the visual sense. He would also be encouraged to use his tactile and olfactory senses as well.
Now, Samuel, what have you got to do? Good boy. Well done.
There's nobody else.
Well done, Samuel.
There's nobody else. Some got to protection and no practicing, trying and squaring off.
Generally, mannerisms, certainly with youngsters who are congenitally blind, can develop, and if they're not highlighted or pointed out to the individual, they become, as a youngster, perhaps not as distracting, but as an adult, sometimes unacceptable, because often you get the eye poking, the rocking, perhaps the head shaking, that sort of thing. But it is something that you need to draw to the child's attention. And you don't reinforce it by saying, Samuel, don't do that. You maybe just place a finger on the head and the hand moves away. Simple as that.
Right. Going to walk across the foyer.
The program is actually based on a pyramid of objectives. The baseline being the development of sensory awareness, the development of what we call pre-cane skills, and the development of body and spatial awareness. And the pinnacle of that pyramid is ultimately independent travel with a long cane. And we're talking probably in terms of a totally blind person here. Now, Samuel is still realistically on the baseline of this pyramid. Now, you've got youngsters perhaps where just loss of sight is an issue, you have youngsters with learning difficulties, and you also have youngsters who are non-ambulant. But all these children benefit from the Orientation and Mobility Programme.
We've got the specialist curriculum, which is about mobility and orientation, and we follow the national curriculum. We don't disapply any of our children, but obviously adapted to meet the needs of these particular children. But alongside that, there's also the ordinary, everyday parts of independence. And we've very much embedded that in the curriculum that we offer to all children. And we call it SCIFL, Skills for Independent Living. There's the whole issue of them being able to access information that usually we access through sight. So if children haven't got that, then you've got to do something instead. And that, for the young children, will be about real everyday experiences. So in their playhouse, they'll have real fruit, not plastic fruit, as basic as that. But for some of the older children, it's about enabling them to access in a tactile form.
Now, if I were teaching archery to mainstream children, I would give a demonstration of the points of technique that I would wish them to do, but obviously in this instance, I can't show by demonstration. Therefore, my use of language has to be as precise as possible. So, Nick, if I stand at the shooting line, if you would like to come forward to me and stand opposite me. Obviously, the health and safety aspects of a sport like archery are really important. The children have to be made aware that there's a very set series of guidelines that they have to adhere to in order to make the sport safe. You draw a line across your toes, they will be facing the target. So only under the instructions of the person who's taking the lesson will they come up to the shooting line and shoot. And nobody goes beyond that. And I'm very, very strict about that. Okay, so you're going to hold it up at shoulder height.
Like that.
Now, Nick has a very small field of central vision and no peripheral vision. So Nick is able to see the target, but there's other things he's not able to do. He wouldn't necessarily be able to see me unless I was standing directly opposite him. So positioning of the teacher in relation to the pupil is very important as well. So put your fingers on the string, slide down till you feel the button. So every time you put your fingers on the string to release the arrow, it's always in the same position.
Yep.
And just turn your head towards the target, draw, keep your elbow high, and when you're ready, release. Excellent, well done. Now, same feeling, and middle finger to the corner of the mouth.
That's pretty good.
We'll go and have a look in a moment, but everyone has to wait until all the arrows have been shot before we go up to collect. It's all done in a very systematic way. About 1/10 of an inch off that cross. In fact, I think you're actually just touching one of the legs of the cross. That is brilliant. I make sure that everything has its place and everything in its place, because it's very important when you're trying to build confidence in spatial awareness that they can expect things to be as they remembered.
The end.